On November 8th, Americans in every state will vote for the next president. But who becomes the leader of the free world will really be in the hands of voters in maybe 12 states. You can see them here, the so-called battleground states, from Nevada in the west to Florida in the south, up to New Hampshire here in the northeast. So no surprise, Hillary Clinton today made yet another campaign stop in New Hampshire, stopping at a diner before speaking to college students with Vermont Senator and former foe Bernie Sanders, who crushed her in the primary there. New Hampshire's a small state with big clout. Only 4 electoral votes are up for grabs there, but in a race like this, they could make a huge difference. I'm sure you remember the 2000 election. If Al Gore had carried New Hampshire, or his home state for that matter, he would have won the election. Donald Trump is also doing the math to get to 270, the number of electoral votes needed to win. Right after the debate, his first stop was in Florida, another one of those key states. These battlegrounds could also affect the balance of power in Congress, like the fight for the Senate seat in New Hampshire between Republican Kelly Ayotte and Democrat Maggie Hassan. Joining with more on just how important math is in the race are Leah Wright-Rigueur, I got your name right for the first time, an assistant professor from Harvard's Kennedy School. Leah, it's great to see you. Jesse Mermel, who was Governor Deval Patrick's communication director. Hey there, Jesse.
Hi,
currently supporting Hillary Clinton, I should say. Jennifer Nassour, former chair of the Massachusetts State Republican Party. Hi, Jennifer. Let me start with you. Starting with Clinton in '92, up through this election, 5 out of 6, other than 2000, the Democrat has won New Hampshire. Yeah. Isn't the fact that Hillary Clinton is not running away with us there, isn't that troubling for her campaign?
If it isn't troubling, it should be. And I think the reason that they are pouring so many resources into New Hampshire is that they understand just that. I was actually up there door knocking last weekend because I love a good door knock. I'm a field geek at heart. And they are coordinated top to bottom because they know if a few key states go poorly, Ohio, Colorado, Florida, where things are really tight, they need New Hampshire. They understand that fully. And you're right. They have to be troubled that it's this close, and they have to be working hard to make sure the gap widens and she wins.
Perfect segue. Because what I wanted to ask you was, when someone like her, a committed Democrat, or a higher profile, Maura Healey, or a congressman, goes and knocks on a door in New Hampshire. Maura Healey does it apparently almost every weekend.
Yeah, she's there a lot.
Does anybody in New Hampshire care that a Massachusetts public official or a Massachusetts Democratic activist, does anybody care about what someone in another state thinks? If I were in New Hampshire, I think my attitude would be, are you trying to tell me what to do? You worry about your own people. What's your sense?
I think the sense is that what matters is that somebody is reaching out to you. And there's all kind of data. There's been all kind of surveys and studies that show part of what makes a difference is that get out and vote, that ground game, that actual people going and talking to you and contacting you is what can make a difference when it comes to election day, right? So interacting with a very live human being, even if it is some high-ranking, high official, who is out there. I think part of it is engagement.
New Hampshire loved, I was going to say your guy, but he's not your guy, the Republican nominee in January. Are they going to love him in November? I mean, what's your sense of the lay of the land there?
I think it's going to end up going to Clinton unless Kelly Ayotte wins. I think if there's so
much close race,
it's a very close race. Right now, Clinton is hanging on to a 5-point lead in New Hampshire. If the Hassan race goes to Kelly Ayotte, then I think it's going to pull Donald Trump over, because if you look at the past 2 elections where it's been a difference in votes of 7,000 and 9,000 votes, I think that if Kelly can get enough of those votes, you're going to see Donald Trump be pulled over, which would be so interesting because Donald Trump went out and said a lot of mean things about her before he then endorsed her. So I think it would almost be cruel justice to Senator Ayotte.
I think the thing that's going to be interesting to watch there is how the behind-the-scenes mechanisms work, because word on the street is that they're not coordinating in the typical way. Right. As you know, a Republican state party would coordinate and a Democratic state party coordinate top to bottom. Because those campaigns have had, we'll call it some friction, they just aren't gelling like that. So it'll be interesting to see what that means for dragging people to the polls.
Speaking of what means, Gary Johnson's doing pretty well there, 10 points plus. And you don't know what's going to happen as they get closer to Election Day. Most polls I've seen in places like New Hampshire, he hurts her candidate more than he hurts people in his own party, like Donald Trump.
Right, and so we're actually finding this in several other places too, which is that Gary Johnson is actually cutting into Hillary Clinton's vote, because you have a number of people who would otherwise support Secretary Clinton who are now supporting Gary Johnson because he is he's a non-traditional candidate, he's an outsider, he's really different and approaches issues in really different ways than either of the two candidates.
You know, I want to switch to something that barely made it into the debate the other night, which has become probably the biggest story in the almost 48 hours since. When Hillary Clinton referenced what Donald Trump allegedly called a former Miss Universe when he took over Miss Universe 20 years ago, allegedly called Alicia Machado Miss Piggy, Miss Housekeeping. Alicia Machado has spoken a lot publicly since this thing. Here's part of what she's had to say.
He was really aggressive. He was really rude. He was a bad person with me. And that is the story that I need to share for my community.
When I first heard, and she means the Latino community, she's spoken a lot, she was with Anderson Cooper last night. My first reaction was, this is a killer. But then I say, it's just a continuation of the same narrative. Donald Trump not treating women terribly well at all. And so why should this one have any more impact than the earlier ones had? Which part of me is right here? How much damage does this do to Trump?
Okay, so I think what you need to look at, first of all, is the fact that about a third of the voters are not on either side right now. So those voters are comprised of millennials and of women. And so something like that actually is impactful because you have millennials that are gender blind and color blind, and you have women who now say, again, he's doing it. But I think more importantly is he didn't go out and say, I'm sorry, the following day. He went out and he started talking more about it, and he kept the story going.
Look what he said about Megyn Kelly. Look what he said about Rosie O'Donnell. I assume those same millennials knew those things. They didn't need to hear this the other night.
There's a bigger audience tonight, but bigger by far.
80 million people, but I think also the other thing you're missing is that those women hold themselves out in the public limelight. She wasn't. She was 20 years ago.
Speaking of that, Rudy Giuliani, who obviously is a big-time supporter of Donald Trump, he weighed in on something that relevant to this, that he thought that Donald Trump missed the boat on the other night. Here's Giuliani.
She didn't just stand by him. She attacked Monica Lewinsky. And after being married to Bill Clinton for 20 years, if you didn't know the moment Monica Lewinsky said that Bill Clinton violated her, that she was telling the truth, then you're too stupid to be president.
You know, so if it's okay for the voters, you're shaking your head in a negative way, if it's okay for the voters to know what Donald Trump allegedly said to and did to, and by the way, there's no sexual harassment or assault here, just this horrible language and fat shaming, etc. If that's relevant to voters' consideration in 2016, why is what Hillary Clinton said and did vis-a-vis some of the women who her husband either assaulted or had sex with, why is that not relevant to the voter?
That isn't really what Donald Trump's talking about bringing up. He's talking about bringing up the fact that her husband had relationships with other women and she stood by him. And then he's sort of dancing around what she said, which I think is a fairer point to bring up. I still think it's getting in the gutter that where no one needs to be.
Well, let's see what she said. According to one of her closest friends, Diana Blair, in her autobiography, she called Monica Lewinsky, this is Hillary Clinton, a narcissistic Looney Tune. According to George Stephanopoulos, who obviously worked for her husband, she said of one of the earliest accusers of Bill Clinton, we have to destroy her story. I don't know if it's true or not, but why is that not a relevant consideration if Miss Universe is a relevant consideration?
You know, I think that it's something that shouldn't be brought up, but will be, and it's fair and it's fine. That is not the route that Donald Trump is taking, however. He is going after the fact that this is a woman who was cheated on and then stood by her husband, and is trying to imply that somehow she did something wrong by doing that. And for Rudy Giuliani to call her stupid, they are waging an active campaign to lose the women's vote on the Republican side.
Assuming they don't take the route that Jesse says he is, but takes the route that I described here, that I think Giuliani was
I'm
talking.
not holding my breath for that.
Is that fair game, or is that not fair game?
So I mean, it's in this campaign, everything is fair game, right? But I think I'm with you on this one, which is that's not the approach there. I mean, really, Rudy Giuliani has said, right, that this is the approach, is that she's weak for staying with her husband,
attacked
right?
Monica Lewinsky, he said. That's
also
all I'm talking about.
Right, no, but he's also said,
Lewinsky.
right, he's taken this approach, and I think in part, there's a great irony in Rudy Giuliani, and it's also an area that Donald Trump doesn't want to give into, given his history, right?
You know, that's first wife kind of thing?
I mean,
But Trump, no one's talking about it.
But it's also speculation, too, right? And so once
Well, it's
again,
also speculation that's Miss Piggy and Miss Housekeeping. And
Except
there's no
that they-
tape.
the-
Except you have the
example we
woman who
have
said
on
it was
tape.
said to her is
Right.
showing up
Wait,
and saying it.
quickly,
Now you're
yeah.
having
But
third
I'm just going to
hand.
say this, that as a mother of daughters, if I saw that my daughter was taken advantage of and she was a teenager, she was in college, she was young, she was working in the
Monica
White House.
Lewinsky you're talking about.
Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
And Hillary Clinton left her out to dry. Even all these years later, she's still not supporting her. She still never came out and said, you know what, I was wrong in how I handled it. I'm sorry, Monica.
I have one last thing for you before you go. Even if this doesn't damage Trump, the Miss Universe thing, does it not damage a woman who supports Trump like Kelly Ayotte? If this thing continues to fester and Kelly Ayotte continues to stand by her man, Donald Trump, doesn't this Miss Universe thing potentially hurt her much more than it hurts Trump?
Their campaigns and their candidacies are two totally separate things. I don't think that she's ever come out and formally endorsed him. I just think she's a Republican, she's running as a Republican, and she's running to keep her seat that she's done a very good job at, and she's always available. And I think Kelly Ayotte deserves to be in that seat despite Donald Trump.
Thanks. Lee, it's great to see you. Jesse, you as well.
Thanks,
Be
Jeff.
well. Take care, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.